Welcome to The Cynical Developer, the podcast that helps you to improve your development knowledge and career through explaining the latest and greatest in development technology and providing you with what you need to succeed as a developer. In this episode, we talk about dashboards and Grafana with Raj Dutt. Raj is the CEO and co-founder at Grafana Labs, the company behind Grafana, the open source analytics and monitoring solution for every database. Raj was the founder and CEO of Voxel, a cloud and hosting company which was purchased by Internet in 2012, where he spent 2 years as the SVP of technology. He likes to fly airplanes and has recently completed his motor gliding rating. Now, that's pretty impressive. It's something that's it'd be nice to do one day, but I think it's a little bit out of my reach. But anyway, welcome to The Cynical Developer, Raj.
Thanks for having me, James. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. Grafana is something that I've seen, and whether you can say used, I'm not sure. Other people in my clients and the companies I've worked for and with have set it up, and I've always been looking for an excuse for something at home to have a Grafana dashboard. But as with every episode of The Cynical Developer, and I'll put this in air quotes, I'm going to play the idiot on this and play dumb that they don't know a great deal about it. So for those of the listeners that don't know what Grafana is, could you tell us what Grafana is?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So Grafana is an open source visualization and dashboarding platform, and you use it to make really gorgeous looking dashboards across all sorts of different use cases. And the cool thing about Grafana is it connects to just about every single data source under the sun.
Awesome. So it connects to all these different databases and stuff like that. I think I've only ever used it or seen it being used for monitoring, but I guess it has a lot of other uses then if it's connected into databases and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of our users, I'd say, use it for some sort of monitoring, IT, observability, DevOps, both cloud native, cutting edge stuff with containers and serverless, and also more legacy IT stuff too. But it's the community is really pushing it in all sorts of different directions, and especially over the last few years, we've seen a really wide variety of use cases with Grafana.
Sure. And I think as developers, we always love a good dashboard. I know I've built my fair share of them over the years for many different use cases, for CRMs and as we said, health monitoring systems and stuff like that. But why would I use Grafana and not roll my own? Because rolling my own, surely that's a trivial task, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know if it's trivial. I mean, if you rolled your own dashboard from scratch, you'd have to wrangle with a visualization framework like maybe D3 or Plotly. You'd have to kind of re-implement the wheel on all sorts of different things. You'd have to create a interface to whatever databases you wanted to visualize. I mean, we've put a lot of effort into Grafana to make it not just easy to create a dashboard, but then iterate and evolve that dashboard without being a developer. So, you could certainly roll your own. Grafana is open source, so you can also just use Grafana and customize it to your needs. Sure.
So, what drove you to come up with Grafana? Was it the constant need for building dashboards, or was it a problem that people you knew had and you built it for that?
Well, the credit goes to my co-founder, Torkel, who created Grafana back in 2014. And he was basically working on a developer team and really wanted to kind of expose application metrics and business metrics around the apps that they were creating. And what he found was there was a lot of different tools available that allowed you to visualize it, but kind of two things were lacking. One is the dashboards just didn't look that good. And the other is it was really kind of a pain to kind of modify and evolve the dashboard over time. And if you're not a developer and you're kind of just a subject matter expert with the data, it was really a tall hill to climb. So Grafana tries to make it really easy to both create these gorgeous visualizations and then iterate on them and customize them without having to be a developer. So I think that was Torkel's main motivation. He really wanted it to introduce a metrics-driven culture across his entire team.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it was born out of the necessity to have something better.
Absolutely. Like most great open source projects, it was born out of scratching someone's own itch, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. We talked about, or we mentioned about using Grafana to monitor systems and services. I've often seen it implemented to monitor cloud providers such as Azure and GCP and places like that.
Yep.
Why would I use that over the metrics that and the dashboards that you get within those? Because like Azure's got App Insights and that's got some dashboarding things in there.
Yep. I think two main reasons I'd say. One is the cloud providers' dashboards are generally limited to working with the data sources of that particular cloud provider. And so that's their whole strategy, right? They want you to store all your data with them, kind of lock you into their cloud and their platform. Whereas our customers and our users tend to, like most people, have data all over the place, or maybe they're using they have a multi-cloud strategy. So Grafana actually interoperates with, say, Amazon CloudWatch, Google Stackdriver, Azure Monitor, just to give three obvious examples, and kind of helps you bring all that data together wherever it lives, so you can really get better context. And then I guess the second reason you'd probably use Grafana over some of the other like built-in dashboards is the visualization capabilities of Grafana. And I'm biased when I say this, obviously, are really kind of second to none. And so, it's a tool that we consider really good at what it does, but it's also database neutral, which is really powerful, we think.
Sure. Does it out of the box support these cloud platforms, so I can bring my data into Grafana with little effort?
Yep, absolutely. So we've got out of the box, we've got built-in support for AWS, for GCP, and for Azure. And we're actually working with the major cloud providers such as Microsoft and Amazon and Google in partnership to try to create a really great experience for our mutual users. So absolutely. In fact, I'd say interoperability with the cloud providers has been one of the main kind of focus areas of Grafana since the 6.0 release last year.
Sure. So how does that work? Is it hard coded in there? Is there a plugin framework or anything like that helps you to support all these different platforms?
Yeah, there's definitely a plugin framework, and we introduced the plugin framework back in Grafana 3.0 about 4 years ago, and we've really kind of been very fortunate to see a lot of different plugins created not just by Grafana Labs but by the community. So at this point, there's over 60 different plugins for Grafana, and very wide range of data sources. And the plugin infrastructure and the plugin architecture of Grafana has been key to its adoption, because it's very easy to create new data sources, new visualization types. And because it's an open source project, and because we're lucky enough to kind of be the stewards of this very large and vibrant community, we've seen a lot of innovation and a lot of new plugins kind of come out of the community in areas that we couldn't even have imagined ourselves. And that's a cool thing about open source, I guess. Sure.
So you mentioned as well that it's database agnostic. Would you use Grafana as a limited replacement for something like Power BI, where you could have a view on your live data on your system?
Yeah, I mean, so our sweet spot's definitely in the monitoring and observability space, but there's been a few things recently over the last year that have really kind of pushed Grafana towards more of the BI use cases. And so I wouldn't say that we yet compete head on with tools like Power BI or Tableau, but the community is definitely pushing us in that direction. And a few things that have really kind of opened the doors in those areas are things like SQL support, things like supporting tabular data a lot better. And Grafana's always been real time. So I'd say we're starting to see Grafana be used in the BI space, but we're really being pulled in that direction by our developer community. And because we've kind of been pulled in that direction, we as Grafana Labs are now starting to really think about that. And you'll be seeing some changes in kind of Grafana 7.x and in Grafana 8 that really kind of solidified that story.
Sure. So you mentioned there that obviously the biggest use case is for software and application monitoring.
Yep.
So do you have a lot of plugins available for APM and ALM products like Datadog, Raygun, Stackify, New Relic, are a few I can think of off the top of my head?
Yeah. So, Grafana 7.0, which actually gets released in just a few days here, is add support for traces along with metrics and logs. So some of the vendors you mentioned, we do have plugins available in our enterprise version of Grafana for things such as Datadog or New Relic. I'm not sure if we have plugins for Raygun or Stackify, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone's created those.
Right. Okay. So somebody may have created those. That means that if I wanted to build a plugin for maybe some proprietary system I've got, or even for a third party that I'm not a part of, but they have an API I can link into, then I could go and do that then.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a plugin framework that you can basically use to create any sort of custom plugin you want, and if the plugin is useful or you think it would be useful to other Grafana users, we kind of welcome the idea of publishing it and making it available to the whole community. And you can actually find a catalog of plugins available on Grafana.com.
All right, nice. So is that like a plugin store type thing where you can browse it from the Grafana website, or you can browse it from the app and install them directly?
Yeah, you can browse it from the Grafana website, and if you're a Grafana Cloud customer, and we run a hosted Grafana for you, which is an option, you can actually just install the plugin right from the website. And if not, it's a very simple. If you're just running the open source version yourself, you can just run a very simple command line to install the plugin into your Grafana.
Oh, cool. If myself or one of the listeners wanted to build their own plugin, is there a steep learning curve to that? Do I need to go off and learn some new syntax, or is it written in a familiar language that people will have heard of?
I would say that the learning curve is getting less steep. And we're putting a lot of effort into flattening the curve, as it were, not to use a catchphrase of the day, but in Grafana 7.0, there's been a lot of progress in making it easier to create plugins. You can also check out some of our tutorials on our website that are very recently created on how to build a data source plugin and a backend plugin. I'd say that the curve was really steep in earlier versions of Grafana for sure. And when we first released the plugin architecture a few years ago, we were almost surprised that anyone kind of figured it out, pleasantly surprised. And now we're really just trying to make it easier and, basically flatten that curve. And I'd say that plugins that used to take maybe 1,000 lines of code just a year ago now can be implemented in sort of 100 lines of code. Okay.
So does that syntax have documentation, or is it just hack away at the plugin and hope it works? Look at other people's examples.
I think looking at other people's examples is always a good idea. There is some decent documentation now. I mean, decent is always relative. There's also some kind of starter plugins that we publish, like a simple JSON plugin. But the guides are getting better, and we're always happy to help on our Slack channels and on our community site. And 90% of our plugins are open source, so it's really easy to pull back the covers and kind of see what other people have done.
Sure. Now, I said I'd play the idiot, but as I said, I have worked somewhat relative with Grafana. I've been at clients that have had it set up, and I've sat and watched the boards day in and day out, and I think they look really good. I think they add a little bit extra to the office when they've got a couple of screens up with some Grafana dashboards. I think you could have the world's worst system, but if I had a nice dashboard in the office to monitor it, then it'd be great.
Yeah.
So I said about obviously I want to get one set up at home, monitoring something. I'm not quite sure. Maybe my Amazon device usage or something like that. I was going to say a name, but then she would pop into life and disturb.
I know who you were talking about.
Yeah. That female's name that we can't mention. And Grafana is open source as well, I believe.
Yep.
And if it's open source, does that mean that I have to host it myself, or is there like a pass offering for it?
So it's completely open source. You're right. It's made available under the Apache license, but we also have a cloud offering. And if you're a kind of hobbyist home user and you just need a basic setup, we actually have a free Grafana cloud offering where we're happy to host it for you at no charge. And essentially, I'd say most of our community, if you kind of break it up by the user count, are people just running Grafana at home to monitor crazy things or not so crazy things. I mean, everything from anything from their beehives to their Plex servers to their Tesla Model 3s to the outbreak of COVID we're seeing. So it's really a very wide use case. And so home labs are probably the most common kind of hobbyist use case where people are monitoring their NAS devices or their media servers or things like that. But we see really interesting use cases. We just ran into one a few weeks ago where a bunch of emergency rooms in Tokyo were monitoring their wait times using Grafana. People have connected it to their Nissan Leafs or Tesla Powerwalls, monitoring home air quality or carbon dioxide levels, particulate matters with a little sensor connected to a Raspberry Pi, all sorts of stuff and stuff we couldn't even imagine, to be honest.
Yeah, using it for odd and peculiar things. I've recently shut it down. I say recently, probably about 3 years ago now. But I converted my garage into a tropical fish house, and I always had plans for making it a smart fish house, so I could monitor.
You converted your garage into a tropical fish house.
Yeah, so I insulated all the walls, and I filled it with just over 100 fish tanks of varying sizes. The largest being 7 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet.
Wow. Was that all to code?
I wanted to get it to that point, but I never did. And then kids came along, and it was too much work to maintain all those fish tanks and look after the fish properly. But I always had the dream of making it a smart fish house where I could control it from an app. I could control it from a website, and I would have Grafana dashboards that would show me the levels, the water levels, the chemical levels, all that sort of thing in the tanks.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't have that anymore, although I do still have my reptiles. I've got 18 ball or royal pythons, depending on where you are in the world, currently out there living, breeding.
Wow, that sounds frightening.
Yeah. A lot of people are dismayed, shall we put it, when they find out about it, including the wife. The first time I came home with some, she nearly left.
Wow.
So I went and got some more, and she didn't go. So that's that plan out the window.
Right.
And I keep looking at ways to implement it with that. I had a couple of thermometers and humidity sensors that output stuff to via Bluetooth.
Okay.
And I thought, that'd be good to link into. And I spoke to the manufacturers as they'd sent them to me to trial. I thought, I could do something with that, but unfortunately, that was all locked down the API into them, so I couldn't do anything with them.
Okay.
But, yeah. If I did want to host it at home, or the listeners wanted to do that, we've spoken about you offer a free cloud version for them.
Yep.
But could they host it on their own network? Do they need a web server, or could they host it on anything?
Yeah, absolutely. You could definitely host it on your own network, and particularly for the home lab kind of use case, or monitoring your whatever it is, your temperature, your fish, your snakes, or whatever you have. It's probably because that data is all kind of local and not necessarily on the cloud, unlike a lot of the IoT devices. Let's not even get into that topic though. But if it is local and should be local, then it kind of makes sense to run a local Grafana, and it's super easy to do so because Grafana is extremely lightweight. It's a single binary. There are no dependencies, so you could literally run it on a Raspberry Pi if you wanted to, and it runs just fine on a Pi. And it's it's pretty easy to set up. I mean, I'm biased obviously, but there's binaries available for every platform from Linux to ARM to just about anything. And again, no dependencies, so you just run it, log in, and add a data source. I mean, I'd say the biggest challenge generally is figuring out how you're going to collect and store the data, which remember Grafana itself does not do. So you could use something like Prometheus or InfluxDB or MySQL or Postgres or whatever you want. Timescale DB is another good option for these use cases. And it's really your choice about what you're comfortable with and what makes sense for your use case. And so once you have your database set up, I'd say adding Grafana on top of it is pretty trivial and super lightweight. Grafana itself only uses about 20 or 30 megabytes of memory, right? So it's a really kind of lean, easy to set up piece of software.
Nice. So we said that Grafana was born out of necessity. Now, and we also mentioned my obsession with keeping animals of some form. With currently keeping the snakes, I need or want a way to digitally record all their information: when they shed, when they eat, when they don't eat, if they've got any illnesses, when they breed, the offspring, all that sort of data. There is a product out there that I currently use, and it's okay. And that's being nice about it. I think the company that have built it, not to speak too ill of them, but it looks like it's been built on a very tight budget by somebody with very limited experience. So it just doesn't quite cut it. So I've been toying and playing with the idea and proposition of building a more complete system, being a reasonably experienced developer in my own opinion. And being reasonably experienced with reptile keeping, and it could also be turned to any other animals, cats, dogs, the normal sort of things that people keep.
Sure.
That in itself will have a lot of graphs and things, so you'd be able to see when they last ate, how often they eat, what the frequency of certain events are, and stuff like that. Does Grafana offer a way to embed itself into existing applications? Could I use it in my Svelte or React or Angular app?
Yes, but probably, being honest, it's not an ideal situation. You can kind of iframe out particular panels and visualizations into other applications, but Grafana is kind of meant to be a standalone app, and it's optimized for that. So I think my answer is yes, it's possible, but it's not what it's designed for.
Sure. So it could be something that I could hang off the back of it and look at it independently to the main system.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. You can scan. You can convert the Grafana kind of front end interactive JavaScript to images through Grafana. And so if you do that, then the images of these panels and these dashboards can obviously then be embedded really easily within your app. But then you lose some of the richness of interactivity with the Grafana panels. You can also iframe it into your app, but everyone knows how that goes with trying to iframe things.
Yeah. So you lose some of the real-time updates and things like that, which people really enjoy.
Exactly.
One of my previous clients had a dashboard in the team that I was working in. There were several other development teams, and a couple of the teams would brag about how much money they would make.
Okay.
And they had it on their dashboard, and our team didn't have it. And we all knew that we made, I think it was probably in the region of about 100 times more than what any other team did.
Right.
But we didn't shout about it.
Right.
So I managed to convince the lead dev at my client that you should put that on that board, just to quiet them down. just so when they come up and they go, oh, we made £5,000 today or $5,000. You can go, oh, that's cute. We've made $500,000.
You should graph the two on the same panel and show how relatively, right?
Yeah. And that was good. We used to love seeing that, and we had a link into. We were using a third party for part of the system, and because we were using Grafana to monitor our system, we actually knew when there was an issue with the third party before they did.
That's
So
cool.
we would actually contact them and go, your database has ground to a halt. And they're like, well, we haven't had any messages yet from it.
Right.
And literally while they were on the phone, they'd go, we're getting notifications now.
Right. You were their early warning system, right? And that's
Yeah.
and that's the great thing. I mean, not just about Grafana, but about, sort of creating this metrics driven culture and real time data, right? Whether you're catching a problem before your vendor notices, or talking about how much money you're making. It's and that's sort of the reason Torkel got really excited about creating Grafana. It was yes, it's a technology, and you're solving problems, but at the end of the day, like, if you can affect the culture of your team, that's a pretty big win, right?
Yeah, definitely is. And it's fantastic. I think the fact that it's open source as well is brave, maybe, or exciting. But is it possible for people to get involved with Grafana on the open source side? Could they commit code to it, or is it just open source as in you can see what the code is?
No, it's so Grafana is absolutely open source in the true definition of the word, meaning we really care about community, and we try to foster that community. It's not a matter of we've thrown a bunch of code over the wall and it's you're not welcome to participate. We really encourage participation, and some of the best features in Grafana and some of the most interesting data sources and panels and even core backend capabilities have come from the community. And so, we're lucky enough to have a large and, vibrant community that really, helps us build better software. So yeah, anyone's welcome to get involved with the project, right? I mean, you can start small with helping with, bug fixes or documentation, and, you could potentially open a pull request to, refactor a huge backend part of Grafana itself. So, over the last month, we've had, about 75 different people contribute code to Grafana in one form or another, and most of those people don't work for Grafana Labs. So, I'd say we are open source in the truest way of the word, and that's the reason we're open source. To be honest, is we get a lot of it's like a tailwind for the whole project and for the business having this super engaged community. And so we try to be welcoming. We try to help people get started. I mean, we can always be doing a better job with that, for sure. It's a constant struggle. But I mean, if you're interested in rolling your sleeves up and trying to get involved in the project, we're all about that.
Cool. So anyone out there that is interested in getting involved, what technologies are used to develop Grafana?
So it's basically, the front end is in JavaScript and in React. It was originally written in Angular, but for, shall we call it, tech fashion reasons, I like to say, we were undergoing a massive rewrite from Angular to React. And I joke about tech fashion, but I'm actually kind of more than half serious. The main reason we're transitioning from Angular to React is so we can continue to attract the most talented developers, and so that we're kind of in line with the latest popular frameworks, right? So that transition is, I'd say, it's been underway for well over 2 years, and at this point is well over 50% complete. So it's React, JavaScript on the front end, and on the back end it's Go. And so Go and React are sort of the two things on the back end and the front end. But you can actually write the plugins themselves in any language that you want. So there's some pretty cool flexibility there.
Nice. Yeah, Go is not a language I've done a lot with. I build a few of my sites, including the site for the podcast, in Hugo, which is a templating engine, which I believe it's based upon Go, but not actually Go.
Gotcha.
It's had a few nuances to it that I had difficulty with, but I think that's my own stupidity more than anything else. So that's been interesting. As we mentioned, it's an open source project, and we've said that if you are doing your own little kit setup, you could host it locally, you could host it in the cloud for free. But if I'm hosting it for a business or enterprise, is there a cost to that?
Yeah, so that's basically our monetization strategy. We have two products that help us build a sustainable business and help us ultimately make money. And those two products are Grafana Cloud, which is sort of like a full stack, including metrics, logs, Grafana itself. And that's really designed for, at scale companies that want a cutting edge open source observability stack for metrics, logs, and soon to be traces. And so that's our primary product. And then we have our second product is called Grafana Enterprise. And, like you can tell from the very creative name, that's really designed for the largest companies in the world, right? So it's meant to be a version of Grafana, the Grafana you know and love, but with 24/7 support, roadmap assurance, indemnification, and then with some additional features around security, around authentication. And also that comes with access to our enterprise plugins, which includes things like New Relic, Splunk, Oracle, ServiceNow, and a lot of other integrations that are particularly important to these companies.
Right. Yeah. I think you covered my next question off a little bit there. I was going to say, is there a big difference between the business and enterprise? Because often you see the difference be the support, which you mentioned, but you get access to some extra special plugins and twiddly bits, if you want to put it that way.
Yep. And we started actually just selling support, but quickly realized that there's a lot of problems with that, right? You're kind of at odds with making your software, super intuitive and easy to use and stable, because then people don't need support. And then
cut your nose off to spite your face.
Exactly. And I think a lot of these enterprise customers really have some pretty specific requirements in order to feel de-risked and to run at scale and to run securely that are very different than the requirements of sort of startups or mid-market companies. So it's always a careful balance trying to figure out what goes into our enterprise version and what stays in open source. But we're still figuring that out as we go. But I'd say probably 95% of what we do is open source, and we very much consider ourselves an open source company. And the open source project gives us a really wide reach, and it's I think it's been key to the overall adoption curve, obviously, of Grafana itself.
Sure. So if the listeners wanted to find out a little bit more about Grafana, where would you suggest they go? Is there any like Pluralsight courses that they should go and do? Do they need any official training on it or anything like that?
I mean, I'd really encourage, if people want to, just kind of get started, I'd really recommend going to grafana.com, either downloading the open source version or signing up for the free cloud service. There's also a lot of tutorials on YouTube and on our tutorial site. We have a conference every year where this year it's currently ongoing. This year it's Grafana Online instead of Grafana Con for obvious reasons, since everyone's stuck at home. And there's often a lot of really good content that comes out of that shows how people are using Grafana in different ways. So, go to grafana.com, either download the open source project and run it yourself, or, take advantage of our free cloud tier. And, there's a wealth of documentation on the site. There's a lot of different, literally thousands of videos on YouTube. Most of them weren't created by us. Created by, again, the larger community. And we also have a community site at community.grafana.com and a Slack channel available at slack.grafana.com. And so we try to, be welcoming of new users. And, there is a learning curve for sure. But again, we're trying to, make that as flat as possible. It's an ongoing endeavor, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. So through the magic and time travel of podcasting, while we're recording this, I think Grafana 7 is about to drop in a couple of days' time. But when this episode actually goes out, it will have been a couple of weeks. But for those of you that out there that are asking the question, what's new in Grafana 7 that I should be excited about? Could you elaborate on maybe some of the new things that are coming for 7?
Yeah, sure. So we're really excited about the 7.0 release. It's our sort of most monumental release yet. Lots of things that are new, but personally speaking, the three things that I'm really excited about are the addition of what we call transformations. So normally Grafana just allows you to query your data and visualize it. And if you can't query it in the right way, and you can't kind of massage the data through the query that you're sending to the database, then you're kind of out of luck. And so, that's been a huge feature request from the community has been to allow them to kind of massage the data or do calculations on the data or do joins on the data before it's visualized. So we've added that. That's a major feature in Grafana 7. So now instead of just querying the data and visualizing it, that pipeline is extended to querying the data, applying some transformations to the data within Grafana itself, and then visualizing it. So what that means is you could take some data from one data source and combine it with some data from another data source. Maybe you multiply them together. Maybe you show the relative percentage of that, whatever you want, right? And so the transformations feature kind of really extends the capabilities of Grafana beyond just visualization. So that's one that's really exciting. The other sort of really exciting feature in my mind is adding support for traces. So you spoke about APM, obviously related to that.
Yep.
And Grafana now comes with out-of-the-box support for two very popular open source tracing projects, namely Jaeger and Zipkin. So if you're using any of those tools, you can kind of now bring in the whole observability story from metrics to logs to traces, all within Grafana itself. So that's another, I think, cool milestone that we've reached with 7.0. And then the third interesting new feature, not really a feature so much as a reimagination of the plugin architecture, is, like I mentioned, plugins have just become a lot easier to build, a lot easier to maintain, a lot more powerful in general. So we're really kind of doubling down on, making it easier and making it basically, better overall, the way that people develop plugins for Grafana. Because plugins have really been what's made Grafana go really wide and have added a lot to Grafana's success. So we want to just, lower the bar, so to speak, so that more developers can create plugins and that the whole community can then enjoy those plugins.
Cool. Yeah, some nice features in there. And I think lowering the barrier to entry as much as you can for anything, for any part of your system is always a must for any application. So it's fantastic to hear that you're doing that. I've been a fan of Grafana for a long time, and it sounds like I'm going to be a fan for many more years. And I would definitely push the listeners out there. Go, if you haven't heard about it or haven't touched it, seen it, definitely go and have a play with it. I think you will like it. It's pretty good. But that, I think, brings us to the end of this episode. So that leaves me with to thank you, Raj, for coming on and talking to me today.
My pleasure, James. Yeah, this was tons of fun.
Awesome. And thank you, as always, to the listeners out there. You've been listening to The Cynical Developer. I'm James Dutt, and you've been listening to Raj Dutt talking about dashboards and Grafana. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, then drop us an email, a tweet, or leave a comment on the website where you can find all the resource links, show notes for each episode. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is, and help The Cynical Developer to reach more developers around the globe.